Hello, welcome to the Slow Goods Podcast, where we love to talk quality and design, but most of all, we love to hear the inspiring stories of the masters of these spaces. Join me, your host, Logan Ratcliffe, as we talk about Maine, adventure, business, and we explore with these creators the different aspects of quality and design and everything around them together. Today, I thought I would just talk about the origins of the rope company and Slow Goods Podcast and why we're doing these things and what makes us us, what makes us tick, why we're here, what we're doing, what we're passionate about. Our story starts, so my wife and I really started this business together, and I'll talk about kind of her side first. We're from Mid-Coast, Maine. She's from Friendship. I'm from St. George, and we both grew up in generational fishing families, some boat building, some rope making. Hannah's side, her dad owns a lobster wharf. She is a Lash, part of the Lash Brothers boat building, who was famous for a while, still is. And I just really appreciate her family. They're very special to me. And it's a large family. Her grandfather had 13 brothers and sisters. And so it's a huge part of Friendship. And it's a really special place down there. And just really kind, giving people. And a lot of captains in her family. And Hannah has a great natural eye for design, making things beautiful and styling. I'm just so thankful for her in many ways. She's just this amazing wife God gave me. And, you know, what her part of this company has been, you know, when we first got into this, there was people making other doormats, maybe similar products, but it was a lot of bright colors and coastal niche-y type of stuff. And I mean, we were able to too, but we got into really a lot of more design forward oriented colors. And I would say she has really been a huge, probably the main person that pushed that forward. And she also just has a eye for detail and intention. And I go to her for so many things, hiring and talking with team members, and she's got a different emotional intelligence than me and everything. So I just, you know, we're really a team. And we have 2 girls, Tess and Caroline, 3 and 5, and they're just a huge blessing. And then my side is, like I said, I grew up in St. George, actually really close to Ratcliffe Island. We do not own the island. There was no Ratcliffe on the island. I do not know the history of why it was named, same as our last name, But anyway, I grew up right on the ocean, and from the little point we were on this kind of cove, and there was 6 or 7 houses we could see, maybe 8, and all but one of those were all Ratcliffes. And it was a good little neighborhood, and there were some kids around my age. But this cove would drain pretty much all the way out every day, and then where you could see you could still see the ocean, but this cove right in front of us, a little island in front of it, 2 little islands right in front of us. And it's funny thinking now and looking back, you didn't realize, you know, that was just normal to me. And now I'm fully understanding like how amazing that was and what a blessing it is. So that was the scene, and I'd always hear stories of my great-grandfather's brother, who owned the kind of the furthest point on the mainland there. They used to have a fish weir out there. So they would build this big, like basically at a wall. They would put these boards and run a wall out in the water. And when the tide would come in, it'd open up the door, and as there were so many fish back then, herring would come in, or menhaden, or whatever it was, which lobstermen call pogies. Nobody really knows why they call them pogies. They're called menhaden. But, they'd fill that up, and that would be their bait to go haul their lobster traps with, or to sell to some of their friends to go lobstering with. And so I'd hear about those wares a lot. They would have other ones off other islands. But it was a working family and team. There was 2 or 3 little wharfs in that cove, and they'd do everything there. They would bait up their boats there, put their bait there. They'd make traps. When they made traps, it was like a family day or a neighborhood day. They'd all get together. Those were wooden traps back then. And they would tar. They would bend wood and anyway, put the traps together. But it was quintessential nostalgic fishing area, village. And most of it's still there today. Some of the wharfs have fallen in a little bit, and obviously they're not used like they used to. They're bigger wharfs now, and that one's really tight. It's difficult. But, most of it's still there today. My parents are in their same house. The houses are there. They're not all owned by family anymore, but it's a really neat place. And then where my wife grew up, she grew up also right on the water. Her dad decided to build a commercial lobstering wharf right next to their house. And that's where they still are today. There's a house, and then 50 feet away is the ocean. And a nice little beach. And then further down the point a little bit is a nice wharf that comes right off. And they have 10 or 12 guys there that go off that wharf. So it's very busy. And it's just so neat. Her brother goes lobstering, and there's a wharf right next door and another wharf, and it's just a very tight lobstering community. And then she has all that heritage with boat building and duck decoy making, and I think there's also some captains in there. And but these quaint local Maine towns are just, Friendship is more of a town. You could walk around and go to a store and get things. Where I grew up, there was you could walk to your neighbor's house, but you had to go to town to get supplies. So a little different, but just really special places and with special, kind people, just helpful people. And I only tell that because that's what we all love. I feel like that's what everybody loves, and that's the ideal they want to get to. That's the nostalgia of Maine. That is really, trying to get to peace, tranquility, and contentment, and being outdoors and working with your hands. And it seems like what we're made to do. And it was just such a blessing as a child to be able to live through that, and hopefully, Lord willing, our kids will be able to do the same. And I think they're mostly doing that now. We're not right on the water. We're in Friendship now. We do plan to build something closer to the water, but every time Hannah and I go somewhere together special, it's always basically in just a coastal town in Maine, and we love it. We're thankful for it. My dad's side, I'm 5th generation lobsterman. My dad was a lobsterman. His dad was a lobsterman. His dad was, and there's boat captains in there, different things like that. But basically, just the quintessential, living on the Maine coast lobstering family. And then there's my mom and her father. So my mom's father, huge influence on many, many people. My great-grandfather came over from England. My grandfather's father came over from England after the war. And he used to work in lace factories. And he was an excellent lace maker. He came over here and started making lace. It's a very involved process, and lace is a really high-quality item. And so anyway, he he was good at making lace, but he was not a great businessman. He wasn't very good with people. He was kind of mean by many accounts. So my grandfather, apprentice, worked in that lace shop his whole life. This is in Rhode Island. And, he would always talk with his dad. He was kind of my grandfather he was very capable and smart. And so he kept talking to his dad about what he should be doing differently. And his dad actually sent him to New York to work with the Jews and the Jewish culture people there, because they really knew New York. Not New York. They really knew business. So he went up and apprenticed with them, learning about the lace industry and business. So then anyway, he came back to continue working at his dad's mill. So I said, "Hey, Dad, we got to do this. We got to do that." And he goes, and his dad said, "Well, if you're so bloody smart, why don't you run the company?" So he said, "Well, I will." And he's 18 years old. So part of the hard knocks, especially back then, but with him and this family, my grandfather went to make payroll on the first week, and there was no money in the account. And he said, "Dad, what's going on here?" And he said, "Well, if you're so smart you can run the company, try running it without any money." And so it was hard learning, back then. And so my grandfather found out a way with some of the guys he worked with in New York to borrow some money, and his dad never asked him how he got it, but he kept the company going. So anyway, lace industry, he runs that company for a long time, moves it up to Maine, where they used to vacation and they loved, and close to where I live now, and actually where my father's rope mill stands now. And so he moves it up here. They move the whole family up here, and they just about get it going. These are huge machines, a lot of moving, and the lace industry starts basically falling apart. It gets replaced by a cheaper, not as well-made item that looks kind of similar. So that kind of starts going by the wayside. My grandfather was just this very innovative guy. What is the next thing he can make? And he was really capable. So he had already been starting on some other things. He had started getting into rope making. They also, him and his brother and his dad got into, in the lobstering industry, how you haul traps up from the bottom of the ocean. The rope is connected with a buoy down to how you haul that up now is all hydraulics, and we just call it a hauler in the lobstering industry. So the hauler we have now is actually my grandfather and his brother, they invented together. I mean, there was already that type of hydraulics around and similar things, but they made it specifically for the lobstermen. So they had that going too. I'm not sure the timing of all this, but it was around the time the lace industry died. And so they got that going. They had a rope company they had just started called Crow Rope, and that was like from scratch. My grandfather found this old guy in Rhode Island that kind of knew how to make rope, and they first used kind of I think recycled materials and spun it, and the rope was okay, but he learned how to make rope. And so I believe that was in the 60s or 70s. So in the 70s, they really get Crow Rope going. That is my grandfather's rope company. And his brother takes a hydraulic company. He takes the rope company, and he goes on to grow it. And to the point where in the mid-'80s to the mid-'90s, they were the biggest rope manufacturer, I believe. Don't nail me down on a solid quote here. At least in the United States. Could have been worldwide. I'm not positive. But, they were a large company. They had over 500 people and right here locally in Maine, which was really neat. And so they made a lot of products. I mean, they sold from everywhere from chain grocery stores to the local lobstermen. And that's what he loved to do. He was always trying to make the next thing. And when that got to be too much, he sold that company around 1995. And my father, then a few years later, with all of my grandfather's knowledge, which wasn't his father, but his father-in-law, and some of the people that used to be part of Crow Rope, they could see that there was still this need, especially for the local market, for a good, they called pot wop, lobster rope. So my father started his own rope mill, much smaller, but took all the best ideas from like 30 or 40 years of innovation and made these machines and used these concepts that had been developed and made a great mill. So much of the rope making in New England, in this country, maybe even outside the country, came from Crow Rope, him and his team. And having him in my life was, I spent a lot of time with him. We would go to, he had like a houseboat, we called it, a used yacht. And we would go to Vinyl Haven almost every weekend in the summer. I had this amazing childhood I was blessed with that I'm really thankful for. And we would go to Vinyl Haven or North Haven or wherever, somewhere in Maine, and we'd anchor up and spend the weekend and go clamming and fishing and whatever else we might do and just spend time on the boat together. But he was always talking about, what we wanted to do, and I don't know about what we want to do, just more passionate about having your own business and making things. And he always treated us like adults as children, and always had like great projects ready for us and couldn't wait to do them. And whether it was making something out of plaster, or I remember one year we did these like intense glass candy gingerbread houses and all these different things. But he was really a neat guy, and he was very forward. He wasn't perfect like any of us, and it could certainly come off as rash and maybe even rude to a lot of people, but he was also very encouraging. As my grandfather's company was growing, Crow Rope, sometimes competitors would go out of business and he'd buy all their stuff, and he would send a lot of times my father out during the winter, and he would go basically disassemble all their machines, bring them back up and get them going. So my dad learned a ton through that. So, and also during all that, so there was one piece of equipment that my grandfather didn't want to use, and he gave to my mom and dad, and my father got that going, which made like a monofilament fiber that made like backpack straps. And that was a good business for a while. My dad started this, like I said, he would go down as a lobsterman. It was very quiet in the winter. Now guys go more year round, there's more to catch, but at that time there wasn't any money to make. So in the wintertime, my grandfather would send him to some place that he had bought, and he would disassemble all the machinery and bring it back to Maine and put it together and help get it going. And he was always naturally very mechanically inclined, and he's just a super capable guy that with electrical, mechanical things, definitely entrepreneur-oriented mindset, very bold and gutsy, is not scared to make moves, but also is very realistic. But so he started Highlander Rope, which is still running today, where my grandfather's lace mill first was, and which burned down. My dad built a different building. But I couldn't be more thankful for my dad. He always took me hunting and fishing. We did everything together. And he'd talk about business. We'd talk about business some, but he never pushed it on me to be an entrepreneur. He just showed me in his work and what he did, what it was to be one. And all the, I lived and saw all the pros and cons. Yeah, you can get a lot of time off and create your own schedule at times, but other times you might be doing 100 hours and have the stress of making payroll. And, when things go wrong, it's all on you and how that affects you and your family. So he's a great guy, and I'm thankful for him. And he continues to run the business today, and he's got a good team. He's been obviously a huge influence on me. And so he started as a lobsterman. He was a lobsterman, of course, like I said earlier, same time just as soon as he could get on a boat, he was lobstering. He graduated early from high school. I think he was 16 or 17 because he wanted to go lobstering. So he did everything he had to do to graduate early. And so he came out, and I think he went really hard. I think he was making more money than his teachers by the time he got done in high school at the time. And he built a 41-foot boat, which at the time was like unheard of. A 34-foot boat was a big one. And so he was just always kind of innovative in that way and gutsy. He always worked hard, very hard. And he loved lobstering. He loved what it was. He loved the pure fishing, and then he could make some money. It did become where there was a lot more. It wasn't what he was used to, so he didn't like it as much. And, the rope company had started was doing well enough, so he did kind of retire. I don't know if you ever fully retire as a lobsterman. You always kind of keep your license, and it's out there, but and it's part of your roots. But he did stop a few years ago, and just runs a Highliner rope now. And they make quality rope, a lot of rope with a few guys, and they would sell to the local fishermen, local lobstermen, and some crab fishermen in Florida and things like that. Then coming up to me going through school, high school, I went to college. Everybody told me to go to college. And that was just what you did then, I guess. That was what they were told to do. So I go to college, and I go for construction engineering, which I figured by the end of it I did not like. And so I come out and I go lobstering. But, around the dinner tables was always just talking about business. All the time was a lot of talking about business. And especially it wasn't like always hardcore business. You might think of it, but a lot of encouragement. My grandfather was basically trying to get every person in his family to start their own business, and had tons of ideas. So one of these ideas, when he had when he had crow rope, he started making these rope doormats a little bit, and they never put a lot of effort into it. So my grandfather was trying to get somebody in our family to make these rope doormats, especially where my dad made rope. Seemed like a pretty good combination. So a couple of people kicked it around, and I was lobstering, and it seemed like nobody else wanted to do it. And I knew I wanted to start my own business. So I said, hey, this is the best opportunity I have. So it started. And me and my sternman, when you go lobstering, you have a team, helpers, call them sternmen. Me and my sternmen, thankfully my dad made us some rope and gave us big terms to pay it, and good price. Thanks, Dad. And, that's another thing. You can't listen to any entrepreneurs, not that we've made it big or anything, but people have had help. There's bootstrap people out there, but people have had good breaks, blessings, help, whether or not they talk about it. There's always a lot of help, and we're very grateful for that. So we didn't know what we were doing. We had all these random colors and threw these mats together. I can't remember if we made 500 or 1,000, but I'm trying to figure out what to do. How do we start selling these things? So somehow I found out to go to this local show in Maine, New England Made Products Show. And we go, and people, lo and behold, start showing up to our booth and buying some things. Very exciting. And I I can remember that. I remember the first person that came up to our booth. I'm like, how are these people going to be? Are they going to be like hardcore business people, like trying to work me down? Like what? The first guy that came up to our booth, this guy saw a lot of other shows too. He said, "What are your prices?" Very sternly. And I think I just told him our prices, and he just kind of went up me one side and down the other, and just kind of was very mean. And I was like, wow, this is a good start to just this whole venture. And but the rest of the show, everybody was really nice, and that was a very rare thing. But so that was it. That was 2013 in March, and we really just started this out of a entrepreneur opportunity, I would say. And pretty quickly we started learning, and because we had the capability, which most didn't necessarily have, but this is where my wife's eye, Hannah's eye, comes in. But a lot of people were doing the bright colors and more like this coastal lobstering vibe, which is great. But one thing I did know, I knew we had to sell things. But I knew we had to differentiate. Like, why would they buy our stuff? Like, everybody's already doing these other things. So we really got into the really design forward patterns, colors. It was about color. A lot of neutrals. The brights are really cool, and a lot are really pretty, and you have to be very careful how you put those together. And they're great for beaches and cottages. They're good for a lot of things, but you don't always want to pull the trigger on those brights for your house. A lot of times, most of us want to be safe and get a neutral color that matches the house and everything and blends timelessly. So we really, just kept leaning into that more. I was lobstering full time. We got married. Started this business right after we got married. Got married in September of 2012, and when we launched this, spring of 2013. And so lobstering, doing this, we were making some mats, and we hired some people in-house, and that didn't work out so great. Then we got into more of the cottage industry, people making these at their homes, which we had a great family or two making those, and we're really thankful for them. And so, yeah, storing, boxing, shipping, lobstering, doing it all, Hannah and I. And it was a lot. And it was tiring, and there was times you're just like, what am I even doing this for? We're making any money. At least we're putting, we didn't take any money out of the company for a long time, years. But I knew we just had to keep sales growing. I didn't know much about business, but I did know that. So, but there was many times, 3 or 4 years into it, just like, and then I hired a business consultant, and he was very expensive, for locally anyway. And he basically called it a hobby. And, there was a point there, I had him for 2 or 3 years, like, hey, this is no longer a hobby. Now you can call this a business. And it was a lot. But there's a lot of good things. Going to the trade shows is good. They're also exhausting. They're certainly not the fairy tale you think they're going to be when you go to these different trade shows and you're going to go out and visit a bunch of things. It's mostly like we get there, spend the minimal amount of time, and go to work, and you work hard, and you meet a lot of good people. But it is many times exhausting. I remember we'd go to this trade show in Atlanta, and one time I hauled through my traps. At that time it was 3 days. I was exhausted. Flew down to Atlanta that night, started set up some the next day, flew home, hauled for 3 days, and then flew back down, set up the rest of my booth, and then did the show for a week. And I was very tired. At first, we're bringing these into my dad's boat shop, warehousing them throwing them in boxes. Boxes you basically would push, at the time was 70 pounds was the limit until you got an overcharge. So pretty much every box is 55 to 70 pounds. And I just remember coming in from lobstering and needing to pack like 13 or 14 boxes and just being, run down. And thankfully Hannah would help sometimes. And but you get to those moments again where you're just like, what is this? Is this worth it? What are we really doing here? Not that everything's about making money, but at that time it certainly was more about making money than anything for us, and surviving, just to have a business, and so you got to work through those things. I started trying to become a true business owner, so I really started studying the craft of business and being a leader, entrepreneur. I started listening to a lot of great podcasts. EntreLeadership was a great one, and they get you on a lot of other good resources. It was like, why do we exist? We don't want to just do this to make money. So I've wrestled with that for many years. And so we had to basically start forming this company into something like, why do we exist? And how do we, even if what we're doing right now doesn't line up, how do we get it there? So started going through a lot of that kind of process, figuring out what we're passionate about, what we're great at, what our niche is, maybe what we're experts at, and why we want to show up to work every day and do what we do. And come to find out, we're really passionate about quality and design. We love making things look really well. We want them to be intentionally made. We love when they have a story, that they're very practical, functional, form and function. And to really get like passion going, I think of my grandfather, the one that had Crow Rope. I can remember being in his garage. He would always buy, so after he sold the company, he never stopped working. He'd buy these old machines. It might be a knitting machine or a braider, which makes rope. All these different machines that would manufacture different types of products made with like fiber. He had tons of ideas. But I can remember being in the garage with him, mid-90s, and he'd be working on something and like he might have a wrench or something. And, you have a bolt and be trying to turn a wrench and the bolt would round, or the wrench would break or something, something would round in there where it wasn't good anymore, and it would cause a lot of headaches and problem. I can remember him, looking at that and saying, yep, made in China. And he'd chuck that thing. And that was really the start of, like products going. It was this period in time of products that we didn't even know anything different, I think, in America at the time. Like, they were just making quality stuff because that's what people wanted. It was this transition into, hey, we're going to make the stuff look the same, but now it doesn't really work that well. So, we were very passionate about making really good stuff, and that's the only way we want to make it. We're not the original creators of rope doormats, and so we're thankful for the people ahead of us. But I also saw, as I looked at rope doormats, I was like, we wanted to be different, so we made them differently. But also, I was like, I think these things can be really nice, like next level nice. So we just, were really intense about quality and how the corners were and how the mat lays and everything else. So we're really passionate about that. And then we got to combine what I cannot leave out about the origin of the rope company and myself and my wife is nothing. I can't explain it better than just God, G-O-D, God. And we're people of faith. I gave my life to Christ when I was 20 years old, and it took me a while to really kind of walk with him and have a relationship with God. I would say I didn't really do that till I was 27, 28. I started the business when I was 24. And so I had, that's our why. Like, that's what makes us. Like, everything is God's, and we're a steward. This business we're to be a steward of for Him, to glorify Him so people can see Him through us. And so that's how we see it, that this business is His, and we want to do all we can with it for Him, which really means taking care of others, helping others, being others focused, having integrity, knowing God's word, and doing our best to live by that. Of course, we're not perfect, and we screw up all the time. And if you ever meet me, you will see where I'm not perfect in many ways. And I'm sure maybe even a hypocrite many times, and not maybe, but certainly. And those things combined, that is our why I get up. So I want to make the best company I can and treat our team and everybody we come in contact the best I can and be others focused. And, it's a lot of times that it doesn't come super easy to me. But incorporating that with the company is that shows, and what we've just more started doing is giving. We've been giving for a while, but of our time and hours, and not just, in support, financial support for other places. So we want to get into the local community and really do some good things for people and support good causes. So I'd say that's our biggest why. That doesn't mean that every member of our team forever, for always, we don't expect them to have the same faith, nor would we discriminate in any way of people who don't. But they would certainly need to know that when they signed up, about what the founders and what we're really, ultimately trying to do as owners of the company. But we love timeless, functional, practical, beautiful items, and making really good stuff for people that want beauty. They want something to last. That's what we want to do. That's who we are. And that's why we started this podcast also. So that's our why. That's why we're here. That's what we talk about now, in our meetings, and we're excited about it. A huge thing to us is our finding the right partners. One way, in sales, we experimented with a couple of rep groups. So we initially started selling just wholesale, so just to like stores, and then they would resell it. And we experimented with rep groups, so you can hire a rep group and then they go and sell your stuff with you. But our reputation is everything, and we're trying to create a special brand and a special entity, and the reputation's everything. So we don't know who these people are. You hire a rep group, you don't know each person and what they're doing and how they represent you. So we really have never not gone that way. We did just recently hire a salesperson, and they're the face of the company, right? They need to have the same core values that you have. So, but these partnerships, other people that are really passionate about, and their customers, about making great stuff and buying great stuff that you take it home and maybe you use it a lot, maybe you don't. I think quality, a lot of times, a great indicator of quality is that you don't even notice it. Like, it's just doing its job. Everything we design, create is very intentional. Like, we just created this runner-sized doormat. And I don't believe there's anything else out there really like it. You have your normal things that go with the double doors of sliders. I don't know if they're usually 3x6 maybe. This is 26 inches by 6 feet. So proportionally, when you look at something, it just looks great at a house. I feel like sometimes the 3x6s look a little gaumy. Not always, but sometimes they can, let's say. These look sleek. They fit right in. They're big enough to put your foot down, no problem, as you step in or out. But we put a lot of time. We tried a lot of different sizes for that, and we said that's the one. We tried ourselves, and we said this is a great size, a great fit. And we've really done that with everything we've ever done. If we're doing a new size or a new color, we just put a lot of time and effort and focus. We're trying to grow and continue to learn who we are and put great stuff out there. There was a time that we just kind of level out. But then we all of a sudden started getting noticed more and more by interior designers and other, let's say, professional curators. There was, I think our first big publication was Remodelista, and they put into words almost better than certainly what I could have at the time explained to people what we do, that we're not niche-y, kitschy, that we are timeless, durable, and made with intention and with a story. That was very exciting, and we definitely saw, things grow then. And we had a Washington Post article that kind of went viral. I didn't realize when one paper does an article, a lot of times a bunch of other newspapers will pick it up. And it was something like, top doormats. And then later on in the year, they did another one called Best Doormat, Best of 2023, and we were the only doormat featured. So, these things happen, and you start to grow a little more. Then we finally made a website and said, well, we sell wholesale, but to show our wholesale customers, we might as well just start selling things on our own website too. We started doing that, and we never put we made it, but we never put any effort into it. We never marketed it. We still really haven't. We've put more in time now and effort and money and everything into making a beautiful website and one that's easy to use. It's very intentionally made, but we haven't really ever done any marketing of any kind, advertising, I would say. So, we start to take off a little bit more, and then we met this company came to see us at a trade show called Food 52. We're still a good customer today, and they decided to make a video with us about the rope company, or they asked us, and we said yes, we'd love to do that with you. And that was just a really neat experience. They had great people, good interviewers, lots of talent, and they made a really cool video on the rope company. Maybe it's not the one that we would make, because it feels very Food 52, but it's a really neat video. And, it's just another step in like, whoa, this is actually happening. We're more of a company now. And then basically COVID happens and everybody's at home buying things. I mean, we all kind of shut down for a week or two, but then everybody's at home buying things. And thankfully we had some good online relationships and started selling a lot of product, and we couldn't keep up. And then we had to tell some people they couldn't have their stuff. And that was, that was a blessing. It was very hard and stressful at the same time, as I'm sure a lot of people can relate. Just, sales are amazing, but it's exhausting. You just couldn't get anything. You couldn't speak to people the way you needed to. Had to let a lot of people down and disappoint people. And, I was still lobstering and tired and wasn't doing the best job of really being there at the time we had one main employee. Renee was basically running the company. Thank you, Renee. And it was great. But that's between me not being there for a lot of support, not really understanding what she was going through, talking with all these people, and just the COVID rush. I mean, it was just so many customers that, hey, where's my stuff? What's going on here? Over things that were out of our control, but learning how to do all that, poor Renee, it just burned her out. And, I'll take all the blame I can, but so that's growth, but with that, comes pain. And I learned a lot out of that, but at the same time, so it was time to hire new team members and change as a leader, as a business owner myself. And that was about the time that we decided, and we prayed about it a lot. And it seemed like it really felt like, okay, we've got 2 new children, young children, and the business is doing okay. It's time to either, I'm working 60 to 90 hours a week between lobstering and the rope company, maybe more than that. And I'm too tired to be who I need to be for anybody. I'm just more of a half grouchy self. What are we doing? So, we'd done this, and we had really at that point come a long ways in what we'd call just, hey, God, this is your company. What do you want us to do? Prayed about it a lot, and just, it was pretty clear to us that we should, which is a huge leap of faith, because lobstering provided well for us ever since we were together, and ever since I was very little, and same for her family and mine. To put lobstering aside, at least for now, and to go all in on the rope company. And so that's what we did. And this will be my second season not lobstering. I do miss a lot of aspects of it, and definitely hope to get more into it on either a very small scale or maybe a little bit bigger scale someday. But right now we're all in on this company, and we're excited about it. And we love to see where it grows, but at the same time, this is also the period, as I'm talking right now, when you're coming off when sales were booming for COVID for everybody, and now they're slower. So there's a lot of growth going on and learning.